Yes, hi everybody. Welcome everybody who's live in here and everybody who's gonna watch the video later on. I'm really happy to present you with David Lyon. Hello, David.
Hey Martin, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. So this is in the series Coach that coached me this year and I liked. Um, and David, you're the first one, so you're gonna kick this off, yes. Um, So there are going to be some coaches, and every coach supported me in a very specific area of growth this year. And the very specific area of growth that David supported me was in business, because I identified that I do quite a lot of things well, but one thing I wasn't doing very well, which was making offers. And I listened to Alex Hormozzi's 100 Million Offers audiobook for like 3 times. And this totally resonates with me. The whole strategy about how your offer defines you for your market and how great transformational offers um, well, can just change the way you do business and you're perceived. And this is where I found David. So happy to jump on. And what really resonated with me also was the idea of nervous friendly business and not going all in Gary Vaynerchuk hustling mode. But actually doing something that is sustainable and that resonates with my body as well.
Hmm.
So, yes, and this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about nervous friendly business. We're going to talk about transformational offers. We're going to talk about David, and we're going to talk about my journey with David. So here we go. David, do you want to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about yourself, and also how you came for yourself to this point of, doing nervous-friendly business and focusing on transformational offers, because there's also a personal story behind that.
Hmm. Sure. So just for clarity's sake, the way that I call it is nervous system friendly uh, strategies or
Okay, okay, good.
business.
Mhm.
Um, well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. And I'm curious because in the invite you also said I've supported you, something like I've supported you in ways that I like might not know. So I'm also curious to hear
Yes.
more about
Yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I'll share a bit of how I came to do this. Yeah, what I call somatic business coaching.
Mhm.
So I started out, yeah, I usually take the point of quitting university. So I was a psychology student like
Mhm.
you, but unlike you, I did not finish my studies.
Mhm.
I quit university in the third year. It's like pretty, like I was about to do my bachelor's.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just noticed that academia was killing me, was sucking life energy out of me, and I tried
Mhm.
all sorts of different things to change that. In the end, I was at uni only 4 hours per week, and it still just, yeah, it just felt really, really not meaningful.
Mhm.
And I had been on this path that I feel like had been laid out by other people of like
Mhm.
like for my parents, it was never a question whether I would study or not. And in
Mhm.
retrospect, I noticed like I never asked myself this question.
Uh-huh.
Obviously did it.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so quitting university felt like the first choice that was coming from a place within me
Mhm.
that also mm, didn't need to know what would happen next. It was like following my truth or, doing what I felt called to do. So I quit university, had no idea what would come next. Um, and then I just started playing with things. So I first created a blog, it was called Courage of a Lion, where I shared my poetry.
Uh-huh.
Um, some of those poems got translated into other languages. Like I
Uh-huh.
remember into German and into Polish. So some people really resonated. And I think some people felt a similarity to Jeff Foster. I don't know if you know him, but he's a spiritual teacher who writes a lot of poetry. And it's, yeah, the past few
Mhm.
years it's gone really viral and I really like him. Then I
Cool.
got into men's work because I was going through a really painful heartbreak at that time. And I became a men's embodiment and purpose coach. Yeah, and did that for, so this like quitting university was like 7 years ago. And
Hmm.
then for 4 to 5 years, I was working mainly as a men's coach, running groups, coaching men individually. Um, yeah, being really connected to the European men's movement, which I'm still am. And then over time, I just noticed that the people that resonate with me are all on a really unconventional path in their lives. And with that comes the question of how to make money in a way that feels like I'm not exchanging my time,
Hmm.
um, but to
Hmm.
find a way that actually feels fulfilling in and of itself while earning money. And so it
Hmm.
was just like, yeah, it's all those, unconventional weirdos, most of them self-employed or wanting to get self-employed. And I
Hmm.
noticed I really enjoy that work. I found it really um, satisfying also because like I'm a huge inner work nerd and I love it. But what I like about the business coaching is like you can objectively measure that maybe better than the inner stuff where there's always like a sense of
Hmm.
like, yeah, it does feel different, but am I really that sure? And
Yeah.
like with the business stuff, it's like, well, you made this amount this month, that amount the month before, you can, it's like easier to compare. And for a part of me, that's really satisfying.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, in the last 2, 3 years, I started transitioning to doing business coaching. I had very big resistance to calling myself a business coach because
Hmm.
I don't resonate with most strategies out there. Um, Partly because I feel like what you were talking about with like a Gary Vaynerchuk hustling kind of thing. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
that stuff I don't resonate with or it hasn't worked with me. And so I'd like the place where I see myself in is like there's the sort of like spiritual healing world where it's a lot about like connecting more deeply to yourself, becoming more embodied, healing trauma, whatever. And then there's the like entrepreneurial world of like having impact and getting shit done and
Hmm.
dreaming big. And I had my feet in both of these worlds, but always felt like fuck, like I care about both of these worlds and I see this huge split between them. There is a desire to bridge those worlds, but I haven't seen many places. So I don't know many business coaches who I feel like, wow, they are really embodying both of these. And so both of these meaning like having clear strategies, going big, having
Yeah.
the courage to put yourself out there, while at the same time being really compassionate and gentle with yourself and not sort of overstepping parts of you because you will pay the price later on. You can
That's
do
so
that for a certain amount
interesting.
of
That's
time.
so interesting. I just want to jump in with a realization I have
Yeah,
before you
good.
continue, because you were making this and like these two sides, and I just realized, yes, those are also the two sides of the nervous system, the parasympathetic and the
Mm,
sympathetic
yeah,
activation, like the positive sympathetic activation. Like in business, the getting things done, moving forward, tack, 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 output oriented, goal oriented, right? And the parasympathetic more the inner connection, the guidance. And so that's super interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I resonate with that. And so I see like, each of us has a tendency towards one or the other. Mine was for a long time more the like inner kind of stuff. Um, but then I had this calling. I found some mentors who really helped me step more into the business world. And anyways, I just realized like, why don't I stop complaining that there is no one bridging those two? And like, what if the calling is that I'm the one or one of those
Yeah.
people to do
Uh-huh.
that?
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, that's how I came to be a somatic business coach, which I've been sort of more officially like rebranding and stuff for maybe like a year and a half, something like that.
Hmm.
And yeah, so like nervous system friendly strategies, that's one thing I'm really passionate about. Another thing is that most of the people that I work with, they have like, and you're definitely one of them, like ideas in all directions, super creative, super visionary, and the direction of thinking is always like this. And what can be a challenge is to then do this, like
Yeah.
to actually converge and take the next step and be at peace with the fact that I will not be able to do everything at once.
Mhm.
But paradoxically, if I'm able to do this, I will be able to reach all of those things, just not at the same time. Like there needs to be a sequence. So that's one thing that I do practically when I work with people. And the other thing is, as you mentioned before, is around offer creation, especially creating a high ticket, what I call a transformational offer, where um, I frame my offer not around the amount of hours that you're going to sit with me or the particular method that I use, but the actual transformation that you as my client can experience. And what that changes for me is it becomes much more clear for a potential client what they can expect. And with that, their thinking around pricing becomes different because they stop thinking, well, okay, but if David is only going to have 4 one-on-one sessions with me, why would I then pay this price? It's more like, well, if David can help me accomplish this, why the fuck should I care how many hours he's actually sitting with me? Like, I want that transformation. I'm curious about that.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I found that if I help people set up a high ticket transformational offer uh, for them in their business, it solves a lot of questions that people have around like, what's my positioning? What's my target audience? What kind of content do I need to create? How can I create lower priced offers? Like all of that can be derived from that transformational offer. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Um, and I think one of the things that really stuck with me from what you were teaching was the fact that the transformational offer teaches your audience, right? It informs them about value you can supply,
Yeah.
right? And this is like the highest order value. So it kind of gives like a complete picture of what
Yes.
you can bring to the table. Well, within that specific space
Yeah.
that the transformational offer is in, right? Can you say something about this? Because I think that is there's reducing that to pure selling, better selling just doesn't cut it. I think there's so much more, and we're going to come to the creative process of because this is actually one of the things that you're probably not aware how you influenced me in this
Mm,
is about the creative process, right?
mm,
In me. Um, but let's talk about the lighthouse effect of a
mm.
transformational offer.
Yeah. So if you want, this is especially, so let's start this way. The clients that I work with usually are good at um, creating authentic connections with people that are already in their audience. So,
Mhm,
you
mhm,
know, writing posts or creating videos where people feel that you're real, that you're showing yourself. And
mhm,
that's great. And some of these people will buy from you even if you have a shitty offer just because they really resonate with you. What I think really makes your business a lot more professional is if you're able to set yourself up in a way that new people can come into your world, let's say onto your Facebook page, just for the, or Facebook profile for the sake of an example. And within seconds, they understand, oh, is this interesting to me right now or not? And
mhm,
both of these are important because we want to attract the right people, but we also want to clearly repel the wrong people.
mhm,
And so if I set up a transformational offer in the way that I teach it, it helps me because this is the highest priced offer that I have. So it's like if we think about our offers as like a pyramid, some people also
mhm,
use like the staircase. I like the pyramid. And if I position myself in such a way that the people who are the best fit for my highest paid offer immediately understand within seconds of joining my page or my website or whatever it is, I'm setting myself up so that the right people stay in my audience and eventually become my clients. And what I think a lot of people struggle with is like, again, they have an existing audience who deeply resonate with them, and some of them will buy, but that's not enough to have a sustainable business because you need an ongoing current of new people coming into your world, understanding quickly what you are about. Now, the other piece, I mean, there's lots of pieces there. The other is actually educating your existing audience and making like preparing them for joining the offer or joining a lower priced offer. So this is around the customer journey. This is also valuable, but I think the point you were going to is this, is like, can I position myself in such a way and communicate what I'm offering that people understand very quickly whether this is of value to me or not? And if I don't have that, you know, business becomes more of like a guessing game and a game of luck, which to some degree is always true. But with this, there's some strategy in it, and I can actually increase the likelihood of the right people finding my work.
Mhm. Mhm. I also found this a really great way of focusing on one thing,
Yeah.
right? Because as you mentioned, I have so many interests, I have so many channels, I have so many ideas. I'm all over the place. My biggest challenge is to focus that energy I have into completing things in such a way that there is a closed loop, right? So that there is, for example, a offer and people can actually book this offer and reviews come in from that offer and that generates new clients. And so these closed loops that
Yes.
don't need a lot of energy from me to be fed, because also my attention span is about 2 or 3 months. So everything I do needs to be finished in this time, needs to be completed, needs to regenerate energy, and then I leave it for a little while and then I come back to it
Yeah.
because I just my motivation just goes down after this. But not if it is generating something, right? Then it's good. But I don't want to work on the system after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So I think this is really something great because this is like finished. Once you have finished your transformational offer, it is there.
Yeah.
Like it's out there.
Yeah.
And you don't need to put energy into it. I mean, you can rework it, you can create different stuff, but it is something that has substance, that informs your audience, that helps your business in the cash flow in the real world.
Yeah.
But it doesn't require a lot of action.
Hmm. Yeah. And I would add that um, another challenge that so many of my clients face is because they have so many different interests, there's this like not wanting to clearly position yourself as this one thing, which I so get. This is like the probably the most useful, most like uh, often conversation that I have with people. And so I get this, like you're complex. You have many different interests, and that's amazing. The thing is, when it comes to marketing, we have to think about like what does a person that comes into your world need so that they can stay or understand the value quickly? Because we're living in a time of very short attention spans. And it doesn't matter whether you like that or not, that's a fact. And
Mhm.
so if you position yourself as this person who has 12 different interests, the chances of the person staying and feeling like, wow, this person is speaking exactly to me is going to be very small.
Mhm.
Now, you can eventually get to a place where you are known for many of these things,
Mhm.
but it's not helpful to start with that. So, the process, so what I say when I work with people is first of all, when we create an offer and you say, yeah, and when I work with this person, I want to do this and this because I have very holistic approaches, that's great. But the entry point has to be very clear. It has to solve a specific problem, and it has to be clearly communicated why that's different to other solutions out there, and why it's going to be the best fit for my client. Once they're in my world, yeah, you can open things up. So that's like when you work with people. And then in terms of your positioning, once you've established yourself as like, oh, Martin is the habits guy, and you've become known for that and so on, then you can start branching out. You can say, hey guys, so here's my habits brand, here's my relationship polarity brand. But if you do that at once, it's going to confuse people,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
they're going to read your posts and you talk twice about this and twice about this, and it's going to make it harder for the right people. So like we want to create sort of simple pathways,
Mhm.
and that it makes it harder. I'm not saying it's impossible. I never, when I work with people, I never tell them this is the one way you should do this. And I have clients who come to me and say, look, I've worked with a business coach before, and they told me I have to do things in this way. And like whenever someone tells me exactly what I need to do, I get kind of suspicious because
Mhm.
how
Mhm.
connected is it to who I truly am? But I give strong suggestions, and in this case, I think it's powerful to make a sequence and to say, look, 3 years from now, there's a good chance you can be positioned as all of those things. But you're going to get faster there if you start with one thing.
Yeah.
Establish yourself and then move on to the next.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that I found most valuable also in you coaching me, right? Because I think more than 50% of my questions to you were about should I branch out? Should I pivot? Should I change? What's about habits? Oh, I just finished my book about habits. Nah, I really want to go there. And always really calmly but clearly you were like, no, Martin, it's good. You can do it if you want to, but I think you really have something here in the
Yes,
relationship space.
yes,
Just stay focused on this. You can always do the other things later,
yeah.
right? So, what do you think I have in the relationship space? Like, what do you think is unique about my approach to it?
Mm, so obviously you touch on the topic of polarity, which is a really hot one that a lot of people feel drawn to. Um, because I think we've had like bigger trends um, around seeing more the similarities between men and women and people in general, which I think is really important and powerful. But there's been in the past, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years, maybe 10, 5 to 10 years, like a sort of a counter movement of like reigniting this desire for celebrating our differences and feeling the
Mhm.
spark
Mhm.
of acknowledging that, yeah, men and women are similar in some ways and really different in other ways. So you talk about that in a way that I, for example, can um, go along because I find a lot of polarity teachings are so freaking oversimplified, and I think they're actually creating a lot of damage because
Mhm.
they just create new like standards that because I'm a man, I'm going to talk about the male side that like men just sort of think, now I have to do that. And it becomes a performance. Like I perform masculinity, which which ironically can work to some degree, but it's going to create a lot of it's just going to create a lot of damage and fragmentation and so on. So the way that you combine teachings around polarity with a deep understanding of attachment and sort of like not losing touch with our humanity and the parts about the human experience that is universal. That's something that I know a few people in that space, but it's not like there are not many people that I experience in the
Mhm.
level of refinement that I see you in there.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, the way I see it is that there are really two different games. One is like the dating game,
Hmm.
and that goes a little bit into the relationship, like they overlap.
Yeah.
And one is the relationship game, right?
Mhm.
and both require polarity, right? But the kind of the fake polarity, it works in dating,
Yeah.
right? I can so easily, and there are a lot of successful dating coaches out there that, in my opinion, not really good. They don't really go deep, but it works,
Yeah.
right? Because you can easily fake it in this phase. And yeah, that they can generate some great results.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, but now I'm like in this relationship. Maybe you're like moving in together,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden it's like, like the mask is dropping, like you can't keep it up. And then what's then? And
Yeah.
then you need like this kind of embodied polarity that
Yes.
is not based on strategy or tactics,
Yeah.
but that is based on habits, actually, right?
Mm.
So this is based on your nervous system naturally moving this way
Hmm.
and feeling good about it,
Hmm.
right? Because that's also a problem. Like a lot of the fake polarity things, I think they're really stressful to do actually, because if they don't resonate with your value and the way you perceive yourself to be, that's a big stretch that costs a lot of energy.
Yeah, and I think what you said before about like parasympathetic and sympathetic arousal there makes sense. Like I think this fake polarity comes from like an activation of like I have to do
Mhm.
something,
Yeah.
which in the short term span can be helpful, but in longer term relationships, this stuff is not going to work because it's going to feel very stressful. You're going to feel like you're performing all the time.
Mhm.
So to step into um, polarity dynamics from a parasympathetic place, I think that's where like the true juice really lies. And yeah, I mean, I've had profound experiences of that with my partner who I've been together with for 6.5 years.
Mhm.
And I think one thing that really helps me or has sort of created a lot of space within me is I love experiencing polarity dynamics with my partner a lot, but I'm also completely at peace with not experiencing that.
Mhm.
And I don't hold myself back with like this sort of narrative of like, wait, but am I like, just to give you like a super simple example, we post like she does a selfie of us and I put
Mhm.
my head just like on her shoulder.
Mhm.
And I noticed that voice coming up of like, yeah, but this is going to be posted and
Mhm.
like, does that blah, 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 blah. And then I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't give a fuck. Like what kind of system is it that tells me that putting my head on my partner's shoulder somehow like disrupts some kind of polarity dynamic, right? So I found a lot more space in knowing like I love experiencing polarity, but it's not the only game to play in a relationship.
Yeah, I think like one of the principles I operate on, and there are few basic principles I operate on, they mostly come from dynamic system theory. And
Mm.
one of those principles is this sounds a little bit wild. I'm going to translate it. The agent with the most degree of freedom wins dominating the system. So,
Nice.
which basically means
Nice. Ah.
the more behavioral flexibility you have to adapt your behavior
Yes.
to your current environment,
Yeah.
the more energy efficient you will be
Yes.
in this environment, and the more control, not direct control, but mostly indirect control, you will have over shaping that environment in the
Yeah, I
long
would maybe say agency just because
agency.
control can
Yeah.
have this kind of
Yeah.
rigid thing. But yeah, I love this. So this, yeah, I mean, this is basically reframing what I just said. Like, I love thinking in terms of degrees of freedom. And whenever I make like a big leap in my development, I notice that as like, oh, I have more choice here.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
like um,
Yeah.
I always know exactly what to do, but it's like I have more options of how to respond.
Yeah. And while we're at it, I would like to do introduce another principle of dynamic system theory for personal growth, which is um, usually we depict growth like this, right? Usually we think about it as straight line. Maybe we think about like accelerated growth line or something like this. But this isn't true. This is only true if you look at if you look at statistics that use a normative linear approach.
Yeah.
But humans don't work that way. It is not like your child learns to ride the bike a little bit more every day, you
Yeah.
know? It is like it doesn't work, you fall down, you fall down, you fall down, you fall down, and then suddenly you get it. And then suddenly you're riding. Um, and I think this is also a beautiful principle. I don't actually know what this principle is called. But it's like a beacon of hope, right? Because it's really natural to not see progress for a very, very long time and to just improve little bit, get frustrated, and then boom, all of a sudden it clicks because the whole system rearranges to something you give in, but the inherent stability of the system, whether it will be a business, whether will it be an audience, whether it's like a social media reach or something, um, there is some stability in that system, and you need time to learn how to put the right energy in the right places to make that system switch.
Yeah, and I think so. Two things on that. One is this is a good example of why we resist change because it brings like it destabilizes a system. That's why I think it's also good to keep in mind change, there is a risk to change. Like we never know what will happen. And so it makes sense that there are parts in us or parts of our nervous system that resist that change. There's an intelligence to that. Because if we were to follow every change impulse, we wouldn't be well off because not every change impulse actually leads in the right direction. The other thing I would add is so the way that I usually talk about growth is sort of if you think of like a let's say a crypto chart that like sort of in the long run hopefully like moves in the right direction but is really not linear like it goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down and for example to understand that the higher my peak, like the faster my growth, likely the sharper will be the drop afterwards. Like
Mhm.
that there's a natural progression that whenever like I make a leap, there is some sort of setback afterwards.
Yeah.
And so for one, it's helpful to keep that in mind. For example, if you have your best business month ever, don't just expect it's going to continue from there on. It might,
Mhm.
and then great, but be prepared for a setback. Don't start spending, and I've done this mistake, but don't start spending as if like that's your new normal because you're
Mhm.
putting yourself on a lot of risk. And if it doesn't work out, you might be worse off than before,
Uh,
right? So we need to understand these fluctuations and understand that long-term sustainable growth might actually look like smaller pendulations because it's like it's closer to the line of growth and you're wasting less energy in like peaks and valleys that sort of deviate a lot from that growth. That costs a lot of energy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that also in the way you teach the creative process you have developed for getting to your transformational offer, um, it really helps because if you have small and quick feedback loops,
Yeah,
right? The peaks and downs, because they're really quick, they kind of like they middle out a little bit.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is what I think every successful entrepreneurs eventually learns is the faster that you validate an idea, the less time and energy you will waste on ideas that are just not good. And every entrepreneur, for every one good idea they have five shitty ideas. They just think they're all brilliant.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if I can very quickly filter out the bad ideas because there's no resonance, because, I ask 10 people in my audience and no one says this is relevant for them, the more energy I can actually spend on the winners.
Yeah. And I remember like I had this pivotal moment, and there was this, I don't know, business panel or something, and somebody said, why do start a business? 9 out of 10 businesses fail,
Yeah,
right? And then somebody said, well, that is super great. I just have to start 10 things and I can be pretty sure that one of them will work, right? I just have to get those who don't work to fail really fast.
exactly.
And I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um, so, what are ways in coming up with a transformational offer that help you to fail fast?
Well, I only step out with an offer, and that's what I teach to my clients, if I have validated that there's interest in it. So before I think about creating a website, creating an offer page, creating course content, all these things, I only do that if I have first validated, yeah, people are actually willing to buy this offer, not just raise their hands, because it's one thing to say, yeah, this sounds nice. It's a very different thing to actually pay, to say, hey, here's 2,000 euros, I'm in,
Mhm.
right? So the faster that I can get to this place and the less time that I prepare stuff there that is not necessary for the first people to say, I'm in, the
Mhm.
faster I can pivot if I need.
Mhm. Mhm.
So one thing that I teach is in validating your offer is you do market research, which means can look many different ways, but I like to do interviews because it's a very sort of direct and more in-depth way of
Mhm.
connecting to your audience rather than, something like asking a question in your newsletter or creating a Google form with asking questions. It's just much more direct. And so you actually check like how do people in my audience talk about their own challenges? Because very often as experts, we are communicating from a place of having understood all of these things, and to us it totally makes sense that we say this in that particular way. To our audience it might not make sense at all because they're lacking seven different insights that you've had that feel so natural and simple to you, so that what you're saying makes sense and has the right context, but for our audience it doesn't. So the market research helps us actually start adopting the language of potential clients, and it helps us test language that we have for an offer. So, like, say, hey, which of these words resonate the most? Or if I created an offer around these topics, which ones would you be most interested in and why? What would you like to learn? So, these are ways that we can check uh, is there a resonance in our audience? And then ideally also we get in a couple of beta tester clients before we even like massively go out and start positioning ourselves as like, hey, I'm doing this.
Mhm. Yeah. I have found this process of marketing research interviews extremely satisfying. Also extremely frustrating because obviously there's a learning curve involved.
Yeah,
Um, but the thing is, I know that even though probably my first 20 interviews, they weren't really strategically and tactical sound. They weren't super aligned to the strategy. They weren't super focused. There was quite a lot of learning for me involved. I know that the connection I built
yeah,
in those talks
yeah,
is gonna be like it's just generate clients for my coaching over the next 5 to 10 years.
yeah,
Because when the people come to that point where they really have a strong need and they resonate with what I'm offering at that moment, they'll be super stoked to like just like hop on the wagon.
exactly. And ideally what the idea of like validating an offer does or doing this market research is I think one of the challenges that we sometimes have is like for us, something makes so much sense and we're so passionate
Mhm.
about it. But then this worry comes up of like, well, what if it's just me? Like, what if I'm the one weirdo who thinks about these things in this particular way and no one cares? Well, if you do the market research, you're gonna start having these voices in your head of like, well, there's 7 people who said this exact thing in those interviews. And then once you start working with people, I've heard this phrase from people like 20 times. And
Mhm.
that creates a very different level of confidence because
Mhm.
I think
Yes.
like it's so weird because the people that I work with are like super empathetic people. They're very sensitive. They can like
Uh,
they're so attuned when they work
mhm.
with people. But when it comes to their marketing and their messaging, like how they talk about their offers, they're not able to step outside of themselves and really step into a potential client. They're just speaking from their own place, where there's often a mismatch because our ideal client is not where we are. There's a gap between us. Otherwise, they wouldn't be interested in working with us. And so if we don't learn to acknowledge that like that knowledge gap and are able to speak from the perspective of a potential client, they're not going to be able to resonate. And so the market research helps us do that. Like, well, the people and we especially want to do that with like our dream clients. We don't want to take, you might do interviews with people and you're like, yeah, I just don't feel like working with this person for whatever reason. But some people you're like, holy shit, it would be such an honor to support this person. Well,
Mhm.
use their language.
Mhm.
Going to
Mhm.
attract more of those people.
Yeah. Hmm. So, what do you think are important habits in switching from like a I do everything and I'm not really aware of what my ideal client wants, and I have scattered low price offers towards, you know, having a more lighthouse shining beacon of I own the transformational space in this particular niche, and here's my offer, and people go like, wow, I need this and I want this from you. Like if we think in terms of not just strategy but habits people can develop to get there, right? Um, because you have mapped out all the skills very well,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And you've mapped out all the steps. But people are
Hmm.
people, right? They bring their own behaviors, and I think there's a particular pattern to people who um, are afraid to commit and
Hmm.
afraid to shine their light,
Yeah.
and also afraid to ask for 3, 4, 5,000 euros.
Yeah. Okay, I'll see if I can. I mean, you're the habits expert, so I'll see what I can bring up there, and maybe you can fill in what I'm missing. But I would say, on a like more zoomed out perspective, make it a habit to surround yourself with people who are already embodying things that you want to bring into your life, because it's going to help normalize those things for your nervous system. If I have an ambition and a dream, but I see no one around me living that dream, the doubting voice is going to be very loud inside of me. Like, yeah, you're just fantasizing. If you have both mentors and peers around you who are actually doing it, you're going to normalize doing it.
Mhm.
You're like, if you have the right people around you, you're going to normalize taking consistent action, bouncing back from, you know, whatever challenging situations, and you're gonna make it like an abnormal thing to procrastinate, to be wishy-washy, all these things, right? So I think we like to create yourself an environment around you that mirrors what you aspire to. I would say that's probably the one thing that I've really mastered, especially on the mentor level. Like if I meet someone who I find fucking inspiring, I find a way to bring them into my life. And I don't care whether I pay them, whether we became friends, whether I work for them, doesn't matter. but I want to have this transmission in my life.
Mhm.
So that's like this is sort of a larger perspective. On a more practical level, well, I mean, things that we were talking about around, well, the way that I talk about it is micro stepping. So not over investing in one particular direction, but taking small steps and getting quick feedback and only continuing those tracks where there's a lot of resonance. So basically, you were saying before the thing about, starting 10 businesses and one will succeed. We can do the same about like having 10 business ideas within my business and only one will succeed. I can only get to trying out 10 if I don't overinvest into each one of those. So I like find the minimum amount of energy I can put into each of those directions to get enough data to actually see, okay, does this work? Yes or no? And move on if it doesn't. I think
Yeah.
that's probably like a habit around energy conservation that is really important. And maybe the last thing, or this is kind of connected, but be in a place of like, I have no fucking clue what people want.
Mhm.
Go out with that approach and really become like, start listening more to what people are actually saying. Don't assume anything. Don't assume you understand.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
Which, of course, doesn't mean like pretending you have no expertise or putting yourself down. It's just about, I'm talking about what do people need to hear or understand so that your offer makes sense. I'm not saying make yourself smaller, pretend like you're a beginner. You're not. Like you've been on this path for a long time, you've failed a million times, you've learned so many things. But that doesn't mean that you understand what your client needs to hear so that your offer makes sense. And in
Yeah.
this, really embrace beginner's mind. Pretend like you have no idea, and you will
Yeah.
learn so much faster from the feedback.
Mhm. Yeah, it's that Zen beginner's mind
Yeah,
state, right? It doesn't mean it has nothing to do with identity. It has to
yeah.
do with how you approach things. Yeah.
And then just, I think one thing that so many entrepreneurs can just do better is be more in conversation with your audience.
Hmm.
The fastest way to sell, especially higher priced offers, is to be in direct conversation. It's not creating more posts. It's being in direct conversation.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And I would add to that also to really bring that nervous system awareness to the whole process.
Yeah.
Like if somebody's doing a program like you offer, um, whether that is in the coaching space or they follow like a group program, really like feel where do I get excited
Hmm.
and that's good, use that, but also see where you might be overcommitting because you get excited about something.
Yeah.
What do you get excited about exactly? And is that maybe filling a void you are feeling, or are you getting excited for some other reason,
Yeah.
right? And being really clear about that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, also, if you're feeling down or you feel you're failing and uh, you have some bad feelings and you're like having that hopelessness feeling or that feeling you don't succeed at all and you're worthless, whatever, also reflect on this and see how you can turn that into positive feedback, right?
Hmm.
And um,
Yeah.
I think this has been really valuable for me that your program is set up in a way, and you are also like a balancing factor in this to um, motivate at the right time, to keep on going, but also to hold back at the right time from overcommitting. And I see, and that second part, I don't see a lot about in usual business coaching.
Yeah.
I don't see that holding back a lot.
Yeah.
And that, okay, do slow, right? take a step back, come back to your strategy, come back to your plan, just finish the validating phase, then go back to the drawing board. Now, what you want to change from your offer before you approach your beta test clients and so on.
Yeah.
I
Because
think
it's not
that,
the sexy stuff. Like hype
yeah.
is,
Oh,
especially for activated nervous systems, hype
yeah,
is much more interesting than slowing down.
yeah.
But the paradox is strategically slowing down ultimately is so much faster and more effective than like trying to have like a high speed because you can go on high speed in a circle without noticing it.
Hmm. Hmm. It's so good.
And I think, I mean, this is obviously like a matter of personality. Like someone like you needs to hear this more often, the slowing down, because you can go really fast. There are
Mhm.
other people who might need more of like, yeah, you can do more. Like you don't need to hold yourself back. So it's like very personal, but for like high achieving, high performing entrepreneurs, the ability to restrain yourself to
Mhm.
do less is
Mhm.
probably a bigger skill
Yeah,
to develop than to do new things.
yeah.
Like yesterday, I spoke to a client of mine, and she used to do like these free monthly calls for people to get to know her work, and she doesn't enjoy them anymore. And she was like, "What do I do instead?" And so I knew from the beginning the answer is probably just don't do anything and see, and maybe your business continues the exact same way than before.
Mhm.
Um, and if not, you can still change something, you can still add
Mhm.
something. And so the whole conversation was around exploring potential alternatives and ultimately coming to the end of like, yeah, I'm not going to add anything. It creates a lot of relief to be like, I'm just going to drop this and
Yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so and I think I definitely the one of the aspects I'm most happy about in working with you is that you understand my nervous system and
Mm,
you understand how my nervous system impacts my journey
yeah,
in your program,
yeah,
and how you can help me to navigate your program
mm,
by making me aware to focus on certain points
mm,
within this and to
mm.
like guide the action. So thank you for that.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. I think this, what you're saying, is the reason why I don't resonate with most business coaches, because
Hmm.
most people who are really good at this impact piece, they're not good at the like attunement piece.
Hmm.
So they're going to give advice in a really unattuned way, and it's going to work for some, and it's really not going to work for others. And I think in this particular thing, yeah, I'm probably better than most business coaches to actually sense what makes sense for you in this unique situation, which for many of us we need. We need that kind of individualized support because I imagine you've tried many other business programs before, right? And probably many of them didn't meet you exactly where you were. It
Yeah.
was sort of like, here's this one thing, here's this one template that all of you should follow.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we kind of come full circle, I think. Um, do you need anything? Do you want to say anything more to make it round? Do you have any question I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Um, no, I think it's cool. I appreciate you having gone through the program. It's great to see the progress you've made, and I think there's a lot more to come and a lot more of like fruits to harvest. So that's yeah. I think like what feels important for me to mention is what feels most fulfilling to me besides having a really profitable, sustainable business, which is awesome, is seeing people who I deeply appreciate and what they're bringing to the world actually do more of that and do it in a
Mhm.
way that works for them.
Mhm.
Like when I see that happen, I'm always like, I feel so useful in those moments. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome. Mhm.
yeah. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well,
And
thank you very much for jumping on this call with
yeah, you're
me.
welcome.
Right. So just to make this really clear, I highly recommend David's work, right? I think this is a great way for everybody who already has a business, has an audience. Like it's you're not a good coach for people just starting, but you're really good for people who have an ongoing business, but it's like, I'm making ends meet, but it's not really comfortable. And also like, oh, I'm reaching some people, but I think I could do so much more for a bigger audience. And then what's the next step to this? And you have 2 or 3 steps in that ladder, I think, that come after that. So that's really cool also, because if you resonate, you don't have to switch after, but you want to keep working with you in that. So I really recommend. And if you want to check out David, one of the really great things is that he has a lot of free stuff.
Mm.
So if you join the Facebook group, you can see some of the master classes, and you'll be invited to other live master classes that are gonna be happening. And I think this is already giving you so much value, and then you can just try to apply 1 or 2
Yeah.
things, and if they work, well, you can have a strategy call and see where this is going. Or at least
Nice.
that's the journey that I took, and I recommend that because that feels good to my nervous system.
Awesome. Yeah, and if someone is watching this and just enjoyed this, just also feel free to send me a message. Always happy to be in touch with people, and then I can also point you in the right direction of what will be most useful of the resources that I have.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you so much, David. It was great. Thank you so much, Facebook, for watching.
Thank you,
If
Facebook.
you want to leave some comments, do so. We're going to have a look at the comments later on, answer some comments, send you in the right direction. So happy to do that.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Nice. Good work.